Our old facility has closed down and we have since moved into a new hospital. There is some rumor that the land was once a cemetery. The night before we moved into the new hospital, the fire alarms went off and it was discovered that the burners were turned on in the kitchen. No one had been in the kitchen that day. The first week of staying at the hospital, one patient said her window kept swinging open. The handle to open the window is difficult to turn and the patient was unable to get out of bed. There is a pet cemetery nearby. Several patients have reported seeing cats and dogs in their rooms. Even my grandfather stayed there for a week and kept saying there was a big yellow cat in the corner.
I was walking past the nurses' station on one of our units just before breakfast time and saw this big black figure that was behind a chair raise up from about 3 feet tall to 7 feet, almost touching the ceiling, and it was coming my way over the counter. I moved my butt on out there quickly. Come to find out, when I shared this story with the folks who had worked 11 to 7 the day before, and one of them had seen a big black figure go by, and they both heard it make some kind of mournful moan as it went down the ramp to the other unit. I nearly fell over when I found out I wasn't the only one seeing it that day. We both described exactly the same thing with even the same gait.
I used to work in an old Catholic hospital, where the labor and delivery unit is located now. It used to be the convent for the nuns that worked at this hospital. One of the nuns died of natural causes years ago. This nun loved and raised numerous varieties of roses. Ever since the OB department was moved to this area, anytime a mother or a baby is having difficulties, you can smell the scent of roses throughout the whole unit. The OB nurses know to be prepared when they start smelling the scent of roses. If a mother or baby dies, the room suddenly fills with rose petals. It is one of the creepiest, but also loving things that happens. I was standing in a room one night when the baby died. The room filled with white and pink rose petals. The nurses and family was creeped out.
I worked at another hospital where you would see a nurse in the old white dress and cap walk down the hallway and smile at you. Then she would walk into a patient's room and apply wrist restraints. All the nurses knew her. It was just Mildred, who died 60 years ago. You just had to follow her so you can take the wrist restraints off.
A nurse who is a friend of mine told me about a patient she had that had been sick for a while, and she had went in the patient's room to get her vital signs, and the point was lifted off the bed just a few inches, and she said that there was a black shadow that covered the room, and as the point died it was like the shadow left the room and a very cold, even spooky draft followed, she says, and I believe that you can tell a point has either went to heaven or the devil himself has come to claim his soul. Nursing gives you a total different look on death and the higher power.
My creepiest and scariest ghost story for me happened about a year ago. It really was more of a possession than a ghost story. I was helping another nurse with a patient that had lived a very hard life. It had numerous things going on with him, from cardiac to renal failure. You name it, he had it going on. This man was very much afraid to die. Every time his heart monitor beeped, he would just go into a rage, screaming, "Don't let me die! Don't let me die!" The other nurse and I found out why he didn't want to die. About 0,200 his cardiac monitor starts alarming detach. We both rush into the room. I am pulling the crash cart behind me. When I get to the room, the other nurse is completely white. This man was sitting about 2 inches above the bed and was laughing. His whole look completely changed. His eyes just had a look of pure evil on them, and he had this evil smile on his face. He laughed at us and said, "You stupid geeches aren't going to let me die, will you?" And he laughed again. We were kinda frozen. I did reach up and hit the code blue button, and when I did, the man went into VFib. He crashed back onto the bed. We started coding him, but after 20 minutes it was called. 5 minutes after the code was called, several of the code team is in the room cleaning up when this man sits straight up in the bed and says, "You let him die. Too bad," and then begins laughing. The man collapsed back to the bed. We heard a horrible, agonizing scream. Actually, every patient in the unit that night commented on the scream, and then you could hear "Don't let me die" being whispered throughout the unit. Every one of the nurses that night was pale and scared. Nobody went anywhere by themselves. By morning, the whispers of "Don't let me die" were gone. The night shift nurses had a prayer service in the break room before we left for home, and then we all had nightmares for weeks.
I had one strange thing happen. It was around 4 a.m. I was preparing an IV med for one of my PTs. As I stepped out of the med room, a visitor was there waiting for me. She was with her dying brother. She asked me to come to her brother's room quickly because his breathing had changed. There were 3 of us working that night and we all stayed in the room with the family until he took his last breath. It was very quiet and sad. At this time it was about 20 past 4 o'clock and I suddenly realized that I still had that IV med in my hand. So, I excused myself and went to give my med. As I entered my other PT's room, which was only 2 rooms away, I found her wide awake and scared. I asked her what was wrong and she said, "What was that?" I told her I didn't know what she meant and she answered, "I woke up because it was as if a freight train just came right through here." I reassured her that everything was okay, that she must have been dreaming, administered her med and got out of there.
If you like stories like these, please support this channel by leaving a comment, liking, subscribing, and/or sharing. Please comment which story you found the most interesting. Thank you for your time today.